Vanessa Barnett. It's Vanessa, Barnett, Barnett.
And my name is Tamar Chobanian. That's Tamar. Last name is Chobanian. And we are here today to represent Santa Florentina in today's negotiation. Santa Florentina is a nonprofit Catholic organization that helps thousands of children find adoptive homes across the city. And they pride themselves on always being there for the children to ensure that they find loving and caring homes. And we want to highlight some of the interests our client has coming into the negotiation today. So the first interest is to retain the government contract that they are currently under, because that is one of our main sources of revenue. And without that revenue, it's really going to put effect on how many kids they can help out. So that's definitely one of our main interests. Our second interest is to keep the wage increase as low as possible. So we don't operate at a deficit. We understand coming into the negotiation that the union is seeking a higher wage, and we understand and we appreciate our employees and what they have done for the organization. However, we do not want that to be at a cost for the children.
Absolutely. And so, in thinking about our interests today, we really want to focus on our strategy. We do anticipate that the union reps will want us to get rid of the federal contract in order to decrease their caseload. And however, Santa Florentina has instructed us that they only have $150,000 in their reserves and their projected revenues. And so when we look at that number, it actually would have Santa Florentina operating at a loss, at a deficit, because that would put us, that would have us at $174,000. And unfortunately, the organization just can't take that large of a hit. And so that's even after doing additional fundraising and looking for other sources to recoup that money. It just isn't there for Santa Florentina. Therefore, if we cut the federal contract, we won't be able to cover the expenses for the children, and we would be operating at a loss.
And our client has advised us that we are only able to cut the federal contract if we can balance the finances. But as Vanessa has mentioned, we've done the calculations, and balancing those finances by cutting the federal funds is going to be very difficult. And we would be operating within a deficit, and hopefully like a couple of years down the line, we might have to close our doors, and we want to avoid that. And our strategy is also to get the union to understand for us is to stay in business for these children. Every dollar that we raise in the union's, in the employees' pay is another dollar that is taken away from the children. And we really want to get that point across is while we understand and appreciate their hard work, we don't want it to be at a cost for the organization at a whole.
And so our strategy in doing that is really to be collaborative at the table, listen, understand what their point of view is, but in doing so, creating that dialogue, creating opportunities for them to also listen to us and understand that while we appreciate their hard work, we don't want to have to do something that closes the doors, and ultimately, unfortunately, they would lose their job and hundreds of kids would be displaced. And so there's a balance that we're trying to strike here, but still wanting happy employees that love to come to work and that want to help these children.
And with that being said, we would like to thank you so much for your time today. We look forward to negotiating this problem, and we look forward to hearing your feedback after.
Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is McConnachie.
And I'm Connor Collins.
And we're Team Q. Today we are representing Sol Cabello and the local union 722. Connor's going to tell you a little bit about our clients as well as their interests and how we plan to achieve them today.
Before jumping right into the interest, I think it'd be useful for me to give you guys some background about why these two parties are at the negotiating table today. So, I'm sure you're aware, Santa Florentina and their employees are very passionate about taking care of children. And the employees share this passion and share the organization's view for the mission. Unfortunately, due to a combination of the working conditions as well as the wages they're being paid, they're having trouble maintaining that passion and staying financially stable enough to work through and continue working on that passion. So that's what's bringing us to the negotiation table today. Our three specific interests are financial stability, the working conditions, and then as well as kind of a tertiary interest, which is going to be policy. So underneath that financial stability bucket, we really want to focus on the wages. We want to make sure that because currently the Jacinto wages as well as the national wages are significantly higher than what the employees of Florentina are being paid. And for the amount of work that they're doing, which is considerably higher, it's unacceptable, and we need to come to an agreement. And in satisfying this interest, we hope to raise that up to the national standards. And that kind of takes me to my second piece, which is the working conditions. So as I mentioned a little bit beforehand, the working conditions that they are currently facing, they're staffing way more children with homes than other agencies at this current time. And we think that finding an amount of staffing and increasing the staff is absolutely necessary to help the organization execute on their vision. That takes me to kind of our third and a little bit lower point, but we want our employees to have there to be policy in place at the company that allows the employees to maintain their autonomy in their decision making. There was recently a federal contract that many employees are opposed to, and we want the employees to be able to make decisions and have their decisions heard while they're at the company. And while it's secondary, we do think that autonomy is very, very important. Now, Emilie is going to outline a bit more about our strategy during this negotiation.
Yeah, thanks, Connor. So our strategy today can be defined in 3 primary buckets. First, collaboration. Second, flexibility. And third, active listening. First, in regards to collaboration, we recognize that our clients are the employees of the management that will be sitting across the table from us. We recognize that means they have an ongoing relationship. It's important to maintain those ties and to maintain that good faith amongst the parties. And because of that, we intend to reflect those same values and create a collaborative relationship at the table. Moreover, not only is that important for our clients, but this is one of a number of negotiations surrounding the CBA agreement. And so we believe that it's best for ourselves in positioning ourselves in the future as well as in the present to meet our clients' interests, to create that kind of positive environment to allow for us to best understand each other and create mutual gains. Second, in terms of flexibility, we have the authority to fortunately kind of explore different combinations today. So what I mean by that is we have flexibility within the wages that we agree to, within the staffing we agree to, and we can use the sort of interest that we're ascertaining from opposing counsel to best understand how to create packages that are going to maximize our interests while hopefully meeting their interests as well that will allow us to come to an agreement. So there's a trade-off involved there, and the flexibility that we have will allow us to best make those decisions. Third, we intend to actively listen throughout the entire negotiation. This ties in really well with both our strategies of flexibility and collaboration, as you want everybody to hear what you're saying, you want to feel heard, and we intend to actually listen to them because it's important for us to understand their interests. It's important for us to make sure that our flexible offers are in fact meeting their interests while maximizing ours. And ultimately, this is a strategy that we consider to be relatively crucial, in fact, to finding a successful outcome today. And so we're excited to take the initial components of the negotiation, ask some targeted questions, understand more about where they're coming from, and proceed from there. And so with that, we do want to thank you so much for spending your Saturday with us. We understand it's a weekend, so thank you so much, and we hope you enjoy this. Thank you.
Hi there,
Tamar.
Emilie. Nice to meet you. Hi, Tamar. Nice to meet you.
So we wanted to say thank you guys for coming to the table today, and we think, ultimately, the interests of our two parties are extremely aligned. We're both very passionate. The employees at Santa Florentina are very passionate about, placing children in loving homes and finding those homes that are going to, build those long-term relationships with parents and not having any trouble. But I guess the main reason that we're at the table here today is because we're having trouble maintaining those employees' passion and ability to work given their current wages and their caseloads presently. So that's why we're coming to the table today, and maybe we'd like to hear a little bit more about what you guys are really looking to get from this.
Absolutely. Again, we echo some of those same sentiments. You know that Santa Florentina is a religious nonprofit that shares their love of God with the community by helping children find those loving homes that you speak of. We understand that the state has over 8,000 children that don't have homes, don't have those families to go to. So what Santa Florentina really does is integral to this community. And it's important to not lose sight of the ultimate goal in placing those children with families and continuing this mission. In order to reach their goals, they do need the funding and to adequately care for the children and for the organization as a whole.
Right, and Santa Florentina respects and appreciates its employees. We recognize what a difficult job it must be to work with children who don't have a loving home to go to, and they really appreciate the hard work that they do. And, you know, they understand that they are a necessary part of the adoption process. But with that being said, they see that Santa Florentina is a nonprofit organization, as we have mentioned. So, and they are a charity, and they have limited funding. So we are here today to be flexible, and we understand that the union is seeking wage increases, and as you mentioned, they are maybe overworked. And but you have to understand that every dollar increase that we, could speak of is a dollar taken away from the children. So we really want to emphasize the fact that, again, we are a nonprofit organization. We're funded by the state, and funds are limited. So with that being said, I know you mentioned that the priorities are wage increase, and they are overworked. Could you go into detail about what are the main priorities that the employees are seeking?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I'm sure you guys are aware, currently what the employees of Santa Florentina are being paid is below not only national averages, but Jacinto averages for similar organizations. And at the same time, we're handling caseloads, or they're handling caseloads, that are significantly higher than very similar organizations. So, basically what we have here is they're doing a lot more work for a lot less pay. And while we echo the concerns of, having every dollar go to kids as possible, it might not be possible, and surely other agencies are making it possible, and we just want to make sure that everybody can sustain the passion for helping children as it exists right now. Because I think at the end of the day we have the same vision, and that's putting as many kids in loving homes as possible.
Right, and so when we hear the wages that you've brought up in comparison to other places, we want to keep in mind that we understand that workload and how that looks with the wages, which is why we are at the table to discuss possible wage increases. But as far as the workload is concerned, we appreciate the work that they do. It's a dedicated cause. It's one you have to be passionate about doing, and we want to make sure that the employees are happy, but we want to be transparent in that the workload is necessary because of the sheer volume of kids that need help. And so where we stand with that right now is that we're hoping that they can continue that same passion, continue those efforts, and in order to show them how we do appreciate them, we are willing to discuss wage increases from where they are now, as we have in the past. I know you probably already know that they've experienced raises in the past, and we've been flexible and open with that, and so we can continue those types of conversations.
Right, we appreciate that actually. It's really good to hear that we're on the same page, at least for, it sounds like some of the agenda items today. Would it be helpful, do you think, to set an agenda of bigger picture items so that we can maybe make sure that we go through in both an organized fashion and ensure that we touch everything that we are interested in today?
Yes,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Alright, so we don't have a whiteboard, however, are you alright with me ripping a piece of paper, writing it, and sticking it in the middle?
Yeah,
That works for both
Alright, maybe
parties.
Connor, would you mind outlining that, and I'll just reach over here.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that we really want to talk about is something that you brought up, which is the wages. We really want to get into that, figure out what is an appropriate amount of money for them being paid, and kind of bring it more in line with the national and the Jacinto averages that I touched on. The second piece of that, and we think they're heavily related, is going to be this staffing component. How many caseloads are employees taking on? Are they avoiding burnout? Things of that nature. And then third and finally is going to be employee autonomy. So what decisions are they able to make? I don't know if you guys are aware, but some employees are a bit upset about the federal contract and how that's going to affect their workload and things of that nature. So it's just definitely something we want to talk about moving forward.
Okay.
With that said, is there anything you guys would like to add to the agenda?
I think this works for right now. I'm sure there are other topics that may come up that would cause branching out of the conversation, but I think this is a great place to start. We see that the first point is wages, and we are prepared to talk about that today. As it stands right now, we know that the employees are at $18.50 after the several raises that they've received over the years. And you talked about the average. I think when we look at those numbers, we have to keep in mind what's best for the organization so that the doors do stay open, so that the employees can still come to work and enjoy what they do. And so we're prepared to offer an increase of $18, and I'm sorry, the total would be $18.75 each year for 3 years.
So just to make sure that I understand what your offer is, $18.75 flat for the next 3 years?
Yes.
Okay. First off, I want to say thank you for putting an offer out. I think it's helpful for us to understand where you're coming from with that quantitative value. While we appreciate the fact that, first off, we do see a little movement from where we're at right now, ultimately, we are looking at a larger change. We do recognize that this is obviously a nonprofit organization that's doing fantastic work, but the employees need to be compensated for their ability to do that fantastic work. So maybe, perhaps there's an underlying reason. How can we tell our membership that they should receive less pay as a caseworker here and do more work than other caseworkers?
I think what the explanation could be is just understanding that each and every organization, business, corporation, they all operate differently. They have different costs, they have different income, they have different funding, different fundraising. And what Santa Florentina does is they really reach out on all avenues to get what they can to support the children that they have. But we can't speak to how other organizations raise their money. We can only really go off of the numbers that we have, and trying to work with the union and seeing how we can make sure that the employees feel the love and feel the compensation at the same time.
Right. I think that explanation piece that you bring up is great, because I think explanation goes a long way when kind of going through these wages. And you mentioned some numbers. Do you have some numbers that we could maybe use to maybe flesh out that explanation to employees?
Insofar as the budget forecast, let's say, for the next 3 years, or whether there's cash flow issues right now, anything like that?
I think it's important to know that with the children that Santa Florentina receives, as far as with the state, there is no increase. There is no additional funds. They really break even when they're helping these children for this cause. There is, you mentioned the federal, and I think we can touch a little bit on that. There is a small amount of money that is received from the federal contract that we have, which is why it's important to make sure we keep that on the table today, so that they can provide these raises that we're speaking of, and that they can provide a place for the employees to be.
Gotcha. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say that's really great to know. Thanks so much for providing us with that information. Are you able to provide us with a number on the amount that the federal contract provides, or a percentage of the income that Santa Florentina experiences due to the federal contract?
I think because we don't want to
Sure.
misrepresent
Right.
any numbers,
Sure.
it fluctuates throughout the years, and
Fair.
it's solely based on the number of children we receive from federal funding. And so, as you know, that has fluctuated throughout the years from 10 to 50 children. So it really just depends on the number of children that they have.
That's
I think you guys have been very transparent with your financial situation currently. I think to maybe get the ball rolling, I'd like to flesh out some of these other agenda items. So in line with that 1875 over 3 years, if I'm understanding correctly, what type of caseload would you be expecting for our workers? And additionally, how does the federal contract play into that? Do you guys have any information on that?
So actually what we're looking at is keeping it relatively close to where it is now. As you may know, there has been a cancellation of a contract somewhere else, and so we are opening our doors and our hearts to more children that we can help, but it won't overextend the employees where they are now. And so the workload we're looking at, I think they're about at 20 cases per year now. They'd be around the same amount, around 20, maybe 20 and a half cases going forward. Before we move too far into some of the other points, we would really love to see where you are as far as the wages. We put a number out there, and before we start getting into some other points, we would love to hear your response on that.
Right. So I think it goes without saying that the wages and the number of cases being worked are definitely integrally linked, right? Because there's the units and that type of thing. But I think with that said, we were thinking, more in line with a starting place of $22. And then it seems like looking at our past CBA, we've increased wages to kind of keep pace with inflation and things like that at an average of 6% year over year, maybe a smidge less, so we counted that and rounded down in all of our calculations. So we would go to that $22 amount in 2020. We would hit $23.75 in 2021, and then we would meet you guys back at the negotiating table in 2022 to renegotiate the CBA, because it seems like the 3 years is kind of what you guys want. We're in line with that. I think that's acceptable.
So just to be clear, it would be 22 for the first 2 years and then 23.75.
22 for the first year, 23.75 for the second year, and then 20.
It's 24.60. We just continue with that 6%
24.60.
increase.
Yeah.
Okay. So as far as these numbers are concerned, when we look at the state average of what an average employee of this type of nature makes, it's $20 an hour. And if we look at the city average, it's $19 an hour. And right now we know that they're currently making $18.50 per hour. So it's not, significantly lower than what the average is. Is there a reason why they're looking at such high numbers that's above the state and city average?
Yeah, I mean, I think unfortunately the disconnect there is in fact the caseload worked. We understand from speaking with your client that there's some unrest, let's say, amongst the employees. They feel like they're overworked, they're underpaid, and so ultimately the higher ask for the wages is in fact calculated based on the higher number of cases.
Yeah, in fact, you have, it looks like the average, even rounding up, in Jacinto, is the placement's going to be around 18 children that are being placed on a daily basis. It appears that in 2019, which is down from 2018, it looks like Santa Florentina is placing around 40 children a day, which is roughly 100% higher, and we just don't think it's fair when they're placing more than anybody else that they would be paid the same amount of wages. And that too kind of factors into it, not only just the rising living costs and things of that nature, so to give you kind of an objective basis for what we're thinking.
So we hear your concern, but do know that it is very much linked with the caseload for us, and so we're willing to look for movement within that range.
Are the employees open to maybe some creative solutions as far as like maybe giving them some rest or something like that? Because we understand that maybe they are worked, right? But an increase in pay would obviously compensate for that. But I think maybe there are different solutions that we can look at if we are so limited with our funding, as we've mentioned. Maybe there are creative solutions that we can work out later on that'll help us move these numbers and come to maybe something closer that can meet us in the middle. I think that's something that maybe we can discuss.
I think we're definitely open to movement, definitely open to creative solutions. And I think before we kind of, get into the meat of this, do you guys want to just talk about the last agenda item so we have a full picture of what's going on? Does that work for you guys?
I think if you would like to do some an explanation of what you're looking for, it could be helpful.
For sure. So, as we mentioned, our union members are experiencing some moral unrest in regards to the federal contract. There is a divide insofar as who is supportive versus in opposition of the federal contract. At this time, the employees don't feel like they have any autonomy in regards to whether they take children that have been brought in through that federal contract or not. And so a lot of them are feeling uneased by the case at hand. And so ultimately what we're looking for here is, first off, to better understand the value of the federal contract to Santa Florentina as a whole, and then to create solutions in which our employees' interests are met and Santa Florentina's interests within the contract or for the reason in pursuing the contract.
Okay, and so for clarity, when you say the employees are looking for autonomy with the federal cases, are they looking to make decisions on who to turn away and who we accept?
So I guess to kind of bring that to clarity, so the policy and how it relates to immigration is obviously a very hot topic, and some of the employees are very, very passionate about that one way or the other. Others don't really care that much. So what we had a large base of our case managers talking about is they would like the choice of whether they have to, accept and place a child underneath that federal contract.
I see what you're saying, and so I think I understand, but I believe where we stand is that we're an organization that just helps children.
Right.
And the label that the employees may see versus on how they arrive here or things of that nature is never something that is a reason why we would not want the employees to fulfill their duty and be a part of this organization that is committed to just helping children. And so I will say this is the first we've heard of it. It's a bit concerning to know that that there are some employees that may not want to perform certain tasks, but in addition are still looking for a significant raise. And so that does concern us a bit. We don't believe that that is something that Santa Florentina can agree to, as far as letting the employees choose essentially when to work and when not to. So we do want to make that very clear today, that we appreciate the explanation of where the employees are, but that's just not something that Santa Florentina would feel comfortable with, nor does it fall in line with the mission of spreading God's love and helping the community with these children.
I think that you bring up some very good points. I think that this autonomy question is not just about whether they can accept certain things. And I think there's a lot of leeway there and a lot of way that we can satisfy our employees' interests. The way I'm kind of understanding yours is you want to have the understanding of your guys' organization, what's happening within it, so you can adequately put caseworkers on particular children and have it done efficiently. And we completely understand that. And I think that brings me up to a question pertaining, you recently let go 4 supervisors. There's 4 supervisor roles or case manager roles that are currently open. Do you guys have any more information about that?
It's under our understanding that employees go through attrition in several different ways and for several different reasons. We can't explain or discuss private confidential information with other employees when dealing with this circumstance here today. And so that's kind of where it stands as far as why the employees have decided to transition.
Right.
Are you looking to fill the roles?
Currently, that's not something that Santa Florentina is interested in. As we've said, that they are happy with the number they're at right now, and they're not currently looking for any replacements.
I think one of the issues, though, at stake here is that we understand that finances are tight. We want the caseload high on your end because that means that we can do the good work of helping children. However, over here, there is unrest, and so there is a need for more money. There is a need for decreased caseload. There is a need for that sort of rectification of the situation. And so one way that we thought part of that need could be met on both ends is by filling those 4 staffing seats. Having 4 more employees at whatever caseload we agree today would provide opportunities to house a lot more children and help a lot more children daily. It would be very significant.
Right, and while it would solve one problem, unfortunately it would create or hinder the organization in a different way that's already tight for them. As we've mentioned, funds are limited, and so to add additional employees, you're looking at significant costs that would cut into the way they are able to help the children. It would cut into the raises that the 22 employees are currently at the table to discuss today, and it really wouldn't solve the overall problem of trying to make sure that we find the balance of making sure the employees are happy and also making sure that we can take care of the children. And so I think we need to refocus a little bit and kind of find the one topic that we're able to flesh out. And I think we had made some headway as far as the wages are concerned. And that's really where Santa Florentina lies. That's where they can help, and that's where they're prepared to discuss today. And so your last offer at 22, 2375 and 2460, we aren't able to do that, but what we can come back with is the 1875 for the first year and second year, and we can come up to $19 for the third year.
Thank you for that movement. Can we ask, is there the thing, I think one of the nice things about us being at the table here today is that we can be flexible in the way we structure this agreement, right? So I'm seeing a stationary number between years 1 and 2 here and an increase in year 3. Is there any sort of cost or worry in these earlier years that's preventing an increase in these years?
What it really does is create a benefit for the employees, and that it gives Santa Florentina the time to do additional fundraising if they want to. As you know, again, the number of children that they receive fluctuates year to year, so it allows them the opportunity to look at those numbers and see where there is more opportunity for wiggle room. And I think that kind of sets out some of the reason why you see the differences in the number of years.
Yeah, I think you bring up 2 interesting points, and that's a fluctuation in the amount of children that are coming in, and the amount of funding that the company has. I think those are two interesting options. Do we have any more details that might flesh out some future forecasts of children, how many you're going to be dealing with, just so we have a caseload kind of size, or any additional fundraising which might provide more capital?
Right. So to answer your first question, unfortunately, Vanessa did mention that in a county over, another adoption agency unfortunately did close down, which now Santa Florentina has stepped up to the plate, and they want to take on these cases and they want to take on that load. But with the increase of cases, currently we mentioned that each employee is working on 20 cases per year, and that would increase to about 20.4, 20 and a half cases. So with that increase, that's the numbers that we've projected for that time.
Right, and what we're looking at is a real opportunity here. It's a half a case increase, but we're looking at significant raises, and it's also an opportunity to help even more children. So we really see it as a bonus across the board.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear here. We have the number as being for the supervisory case managers, which are the unionized group. It's 22 children per year, but across all case managers, not all the case managers are unionized, it's 20. So do you guys, is that number right on your guys' end, or maybe that's kind of a discrepancy between the information that we've gotten from our clients?
Give us one moment. We'll double check that number.
Actually, maybe at this time, I feel like, we've kind of gotten to the point.
Yeah.
Take
I
Take a
was
break.
just going to
Yeah.
say,
Take
it
a
might
break.
be the perfect time for a break.
Okay,
So.
So just to
Thank
be
you.
clear, that was, we had the number 22 for
Right.
the phone number.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you so much for taking that moment with us. It was really helpful for us to recenter. When we left the table, you had presented us with a counteroffer regarding the wages. We discussed a little bit about the staffing and how it would increase to about 20.5 cases per individual. We noted that we had potentially contradictory information. Could you speak to that?
Absolutely.
Sure. So currently there are 22 non-advisory case managers handling about 440 children per day, which would average out to 20 children per case manager per day. Now, we've mentioned that another agency has closed down, so we're going to be taking on some more cases. So that number of children is projected to rise to 450 children per day, which would average out to 20.5 children per case manager per day. So that's why it's increasing from 20 to 20.5.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So then with that settled, then we would like to just propose, let's say, a full package counteroffer. For us, a lot of these issues are just inherently tied up. How many cases you're completing and the wages you make. It makes sense, the work you're doing, and also just keeping in mind throughout this that overworked employees make mistakes.
Right.
And we're working with home children who need the support that they can get. And so mistakes here are incredibly costly. So while we're putting a monetary amount on wages, let's also just keep in mind, though, the potential costs outside of the fiscal ideas. So to put forward an offer in sum, you last presented an offer which we appreciated that was a 3-year projection of $18.75 for the first 2 years, and then $19 in the caseload arena. We were looking at 20.5 cases per individual looking forward. We would like to propose a counteroffer. We will come down from where we were at. We would like to propose $20 per hour in year 1. In year 2, $21.50, and in year 3, $23. And in the caseload side of things, we will be looking at 15 children per non-supervisory case manager, and those 4 vacant non-supervisory case management positions filled as soon as possible, preferably.
So, as we mentioned before, there's little to no flexibility in how we can really handle the caseload situation. And we want to clarify what that means. So as it is right now, we are expecting more children, and they do not have the budget to increase the employees, because that would have the organization operating at a deficit and eventually closing their doors. And so they're not in the business of turning children away and not looking to cancel contracts and displace even more children. And so where we stand right now, the contract is already in place and those children are coming. And so the caseload where they are will remain relatively the same with the 0.5 increase. What we're doing is realizing and hearing you when you say that the employees are having a tough time. And so because they are doing more work, we're able to then compensate them a bit more for that work. But as we all know, nonprofit jobs are difficult. They're difficult on the emotions. Sometimes they're difficult on the purse strings. And so going forward, we just want to be mindful that we appreciate the work that they do, but we also understand that some work is difficult and it weighs heavy, and sometimes the work that weighs heavy is the most rewarding. And so we hope that they still understand the importance of the work that they do and are looking forward to continue the passion and realize that in moving our numbers, we're really trying to show that we appreciate them.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to, once again, for my information, what exactly was the wage total that you guys came up with?
I'm sorry.
Oh, we did get that.
That would be helpful, right?
Sounds great.
Right. Okay, so when we're looking at what we can do in return, I think we're getting closer on our numbers. I believe that what we can do is still stay at the 1875, but our movement in the next 2 years would be at the $19 amount, which is in line with the city's average.
So over the next 2 years, it would be at a 19.
Yes.
So maintaining that $19 so primarily then the movement was in the second year. We went from $18.75 to $19 in the second year.
In second and third year, $19.
Okay, third year was $19.
Yes.
And that was $19 again. Gotcha.
So it sounds like there's a huge increase in the amount of children coming our way due to the closure that you guys discussed. But we really feel as though that they're hiring these 4 vacant positions. Definitely frees up a lot of flexibility, whether it's in terms of wages, whether in terms of caseload, and would make a lot of headway with where our employees are coming from. Our being our clients, and we would really like to maybe understand if is that completely off the table? Is there no movement you guys have when it comes to hiring those 4 additional employees to help, or maybe somewhere in between?
I think it really would depend on the goals of your client and what's most important. If they're looking for additional help in caseload, we would have to look at what the numbers look like adding additional employees, but that would eat into the budget for any possibility of an increase in salary. And so I guess the question we have is what is of utmost for your client?
I think that's a difficult question to answer, and maybe instead of directly answering it, let me just make a proposition here. So I'm hearing for you that one of the important things for Santa Florentina is being able to be financially stable, and part of that is going to have to be this additional fundraising to allow Santa Florentina to have these later increases that you've proposed thus far. At the same time, you have 4 vacant seats in potential employment opportunities. And filling those would also cost money. So what if we created a structure where in a certain number of months, 2 seats are filled, in a certain number of months, 2 more seats are filled? And what if we also structured the wages that we're requesting to be much more latter year heavy? Would that help make any movement in achieving the interest here?
Well, we appreciate the creative solutions that you're working in, and I appreciate that you're hearing us. And when we're saying that the budget is limited, but as far as an increase and by funding, the only problem there is that if we do like an increase of, let's say, the wages, where is this extra money coming from? That's the concern.
Right. Well, I mean, hopefully by the backloading and providing those gaps before employment, we can provide that opportunity for the time to do that fundraising that you noted earlier. And it sounds like a fantastic idea to create that additional income necessary to meet these goals.
Right. Well, fundraising can only go so far, right? So if we're employing 2 more people over the next 2 years, and then over the next 2 years, that's 2 more employees, and then plus another employees, and then you're looking at also increasing wages. That's going to add up very quickly, and fundraising can only go so far, right? Realistically, we can't fundraise that much, but I think we can make a good faith effort to fundraise some funds, but I don't think it would be possible to do it to complete all of those requests.
Well, thank you for hearing me. When we were brainstorming,
Yeah.
just because we're so far apart here, and
Yeah.
I do want us to my clients really want us to reach an agreement today, as we've come to the table so many times before. So I hear that you have 20.5 cases going forward. There has been there have been agencies that have closed that can take on these cases. Are there any other areas in the city, agencies in the city, or in the surrounding areas that you could see yourself partnering with to create some sort of secondary, let's say, funnel almost for cases?
That isn't something that we've explored. Again, Santa Florentina loves to take in the children, and so to then look for opportunities to send them yet somewhere else isn't a business model that they've ever employed. So we're not authorized to really see if that's something that we would be able to do here today. I think what we should focus on is what we can do and what we're able to discuss. And I honestly don't think we're that far apart when we look at the numbers. There may be a few dollars and cents, but I think if you were able to respond to our last offer,
Sure.
maybe it would be closer in line.
Sure.
Right. So I think the biggest thing right now is, I think, while I agree with you, we're definitely getting closer on the wages side of things, and we definitely really appreciate that. I still think we have a bit of ways to go right now in terms of the caseload. I mean, our union has expressed to us just how overworked they feel. I mean, they're placing between 20 to 22 children a day, and I think, as Emilie brought up earlier and made a great point, when you're placing that many kids and families, you're bound to make mistakes, and we think that that's going to be expensive in the long run and prevent both the employees and the organization as a whole from really satisfying that goal. And we would really like to see, I guess we can bring down our amount of, or I guess bring up rather the amount of cases that the employees are willing to take. But we still need some movement on that pretty significantly to kind of get it in line where the employees feel like they can do their job at a high level. So with that, I think.
With that said, I mean, would it be possible then, in line with increasing, let's say, staffing to, we're at 15 cases, we are happy to bring it up to 17 cases. However, the wages, we will be sticking with that $20 in that first year. We understand that there is a time element to this, and so we're happy to bring down our second year from $21.50 down to $21. But our third year, we will be remaining at that $23 mark. At this point, it sounds like the 4 vacant seats aren't going to be filled. If they would be filled, we could see some movement there, absolutely.
Okay.
And so we want to be clear with the 4 vacant seats, that is not something we will be able to do as far as filling that position. So I just
That
want
makes total
that.
sense.
Yes.
So we'll stop. We'll stop bringing it up. That's something that we'll
And then
move forward with.
additionally, some clarifying, I just want to clarify, are the employees unwilling to look at taking on the caseload similarly to what they have now, and being compensated for that in the raises that we've offered?
The current projection for the caseload is not something we can agree to today. We're more than happy to pursue avenues in which the caseload is lowered, and our clients have encouraged us to do so, of course. But at the current 20.5 projection, that's something that we cannot agree to.
Right, well, we understand that. It's just, I think we're coming from a place of, the more work you do, the more you get paid, right? So if we're offering a wage increase, it naturally falls, within employment, that the more work you do, the more you get paid. But we understand they are overworked, and I think we have a solution that Vanessa will present that maybe we can work with. And
I wanted to ask a question first. We know you mentioned that the employees have talked to other agencies, I feel like, or they have had conversations amongst other organizations that do similar work. Am I understanding that to be
I don't
correct?
believe-
Not to the best of our knowledge, we have data from other organizations.
I see.
Insofar as the wages.
But as far as actual conversations, we're not sure.
Yeah, we
Okay.
have data around wages and caseloads.
And as
Okay.
far as the data and caseloads,
Yeah.
what is that looking like?
Yeah, so Connor outlined a little bit of that earlier.
So the wages currently in Jacinto are $19
Right.
on average.
Right.
Additionally, nationally, they're sitting around $20 per hour. Actually, just at $20 per hour, not around. And then it looks like for the unionized employees who we're discussing today, the current caseload is 22, whereas the other numbers are range between 12 to 18 on a national scale.
To be, yeah. and that was in the year 2019.
So the most recent.
So,
fiscal year.
so other organizations, they do have 22 cases per employee, correct?
No,
No,
so
no, 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 no. They have 12 to 18. We are currently operating at 22.
that's correct. So we can tell you other foster care agencies in Jacinto typically average 12 to 18 children per day per case manager. The number that Connor first presented was the comparison with what
I
Santa
I see.
Monica
Okay.
And can we get a little information on where the data is coming from? Because I think we still aren't on the same page as far as how many cases that that the employees currently have. Because if they feel like they have 22 and our numbers show that they actually have 20, that is a decrease for them.
Right, right.
Sure. At this point, we don't have clarity regarding that.
What it sounds like the problem is
Yeah.
it sounds like the average caseload for case manager is 20, but there's a distinction within the organization between case managers and unsupervisory case managers. Unsupervisory case managers are the ones that are unionized, and the case managers are not unionized at this time.
And just to be
Right.
clear, the employees that we're talking about today are the
The unsupervised.
unsupervised
And they are
union
currently
workers.
handling more placement of the children than the average. So it seems
Right.
from the data, just making kind of an inference, that the supervisory case managers are placing less, probably because they're managing different affairs and things like
Mhm.
that, whereas the non-supervisory case managers are kind of the boots on the ground that are making sure that those kids are fine and loving families.
And so
Okay.
to be clear, I think that's probably where that pre-caucus difference that we thought we
Right.
had
Mhm.
came up. And so the 22, that is in regards to the non-supervisory.
Okay. I know that the employees are passionate about what they do, and they understand the overall mission of Santa Florentina. What would they suggest in lowering their caseload? Are they looking to put children elsewhere? Are they looking to not service the mission? I just want to know what they envision when they are taking fewer
I
cases.
mean, ultimately, while these people are so passionate about the mission, they also have their own lives. They have families they have to provide for. And so ultimately, when it comes down to it, they are overworked, underpaid, and they're getting a little bit upset ultimately. And so as far as looking for other opportunities for solutions, essentially, they feel like that's not necessarily their job. They feel like they have enough kind of on their plate. And so I think kind of more so what they were looking for is that opening offer of that 15 cases per non-supervisory case manager per day. But we have made movement there.
Mhm.
And you expressed that you were at a 20.5 caseload number. Could there be some movement there to reciprocate so that we can see sort of where we might meet later on?
It would take some flexibility in trying to figure out what to do with the kids, because that is of the utmost importance. And so when we're trying to figure out, because we're already getting an influx, there isn't an opportunity to necessarily turn away children from the state.
Right.
And so we're then looking at federal children, the children that we come from the federal. But as I mentioned, that is the only source of income that that Santa Florentina has, in addition to the extensive fundraising that they already do. That pot is already combined, and so we're still limited. And when we look at that, if there was an opportunity to maybe see about placing children elsewhere,
So I think that while we would like to surmise what the employees are thinking in terms of their willingness to take on children, and I'm sure that probably weighs heavy on their hearts in terms of turning children away. That's not why they signed up to work at an agency like Santa Florentina, and I'm sure that they don't want to say we don't want to place you with a loving family. I don't think that's what they want. But at the same time, they're very, very adamant they want to do a good job, and they want to continue to be able to provide for the children that they do work for, and they're afraid that a high caseload prohibits them from doing that. And we currently don't have any information about other sources of where these kids could go, and it sounds like that's making a huge problem. And the only thing that we can really see right now is this federal contract. Is there any information to your guys' knowledge of maybe some of the way that we could divert some of the children to another agency that's doing some work?
Perhaps limiting the contract?
I think that's what I was starting to kind of try to see if we would even be possible to navigate that. Again, we can't do too much in that arena because that is the source of the funding. And if the employees are looking for raises, we still need them to understand that the caseload will still be there for them in some way, shape, or form. And so if there wasn't a possibility to work with the federal government and maybe see if they could find agencies for approximately one less case per year for the employees, we could look at a package that includes 19.5 cases, and then we would have to stay at the numbers we're at right now for 1875 for the first year and 19 for the second and third.
Gotcha.
Well, thank you for exploring that possibility with us. We think that it is important for us to bring in maybe an idea that Connor has right now.
So there's an initiative amongst many of the employees called the 20 for 20 program, which is 20 cases for $20 an hour. We understand that like jumping to 20 overnight is definitely not feasible. It doesn't give you guys that, you know, long-term planning and strategic thinking that you're really looking for. But, you know, maybe this 20 for 20, which already has lots of support, I'm sure would get passed by the union, could provide some form of some form of deal that would allow us to come together. So specifically what I'm talking about is by the year 2022, that would be $20 in wages, and eventually at that point when the 20 was reached, they would be willing to take a 20 child caseload, which is a 0.5 higher than the caseload that you guys just offered. And I feel like it kind of sounds like that would bring in all of the interest that we have and satisfy many of the interests that you guys have. Does that sound amenable to you guys?
I think it's really close, and I actually like the idea of where they're going with this. I think if they could agree to, and I know we're running out of time, something similar, but we're looking at a 19 for 19. If they can agree to 19 cases, which is significant, is less than what they're looking at, and then agree to what the city average is, $19, we can do the $19 each year, and they will be at 19 cases, which lightens their load and really accomplishes both interests of the parties today.
Yeah.
I think what's important, first of all, let me say thank you so much, because I think we're actually coming to a lot of movement here. As insofar as that 19 for 19 goes, I could see that being feasible for 2020. This is obviously a big change, and it's a new change, so it's fair that the organization needs some time to adjust. However, in the year 2021, we would need to see some adjustment in the wage, and then of course in 2022, we do need to see that $20 for 20 if we were to go into this upper range of the teens to the 20 caseload for our clients.
Unfortunately, this scenario really is stretching Santa Florentina to their max. The 19 for 3 years they feel is justified and is reasonable based off of the city, and also coming down in their cases when they're essentially getting more children is really something that they think they're being very flexible in. And so what we can do is agree to the 19 for 19 for 2020.
Sure.
And although this is usually a 3-year discussion, maybe this is an instance in where we need to come back to the table in a year and look at what possibilities may be there. I know in the interest of time, I know we could not agree to the rest of that pay scale for you.
Well, if you don't mind, we have just a little bit of time. I'd just like to ask one more question here. Do you have any possible movement left for the year, let's say 2022?
The 19, if they want to stay with the 19 at year 1, we do not have that flexibility for year 2 or for year 3. Right.
Change the operation of it. So
Yeah.
currently you're saying the 19 for all 3 years, correct?
Right.
So I love the 1919, it's catchy, but I think people really, really respond well when things are going up. And I think they respond to, having things to look forward to. And I think what we would be willing to do is maybe start lower now, which allows you guys to, take in some cost savings this year, and increase those to year 2022, adding, getting up to that 20.
Well, we don't even need to go to the 20 mark, honestly, because I hear you guys, and it sounds like that's not possible. And so ultimately, why don't we say instead, we hear you that 19 is the cap for 2020, make it 1875, And then we want to see, though, in that 2020 year, so 2 years to essentially fundraise to get this extra margin, we bring it up to 1950. We do have that 19 caseload each year, so that way we have, just to reiterate, 1875, 19, and 1950. I think this meets our interest nicely insofar as you have time to do your fundraising. We are able to come to an agreement today and not waste any more attorney fees for these individuals.
If we could look at doing the 1875, 19, and 1925, then we would have a deal today.
I think that makes sense. Maybe, does that sound acceptable to you on the caseload and the wages standpoint, Emily?
I think that would meet our client's interest. I do.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I do.
And then I think one more piece is to kind of bring out that autonomy piece with this federal contract. Obviously, for the strategic reasons with you guys, it doesn't make sense to have people saying we can't take these cases, we can't take those cases. That's a management burden. But what we would like to, and what the employees really to make this deal go through, is a promise from management that when employees are having political problems or they have issues with policies that the organization is taking, that they can have Saul, who's the head of the union, and he will be able to broach these subjects with management. An open door policy, essentially, is what we're looking for.
So essentially like a conversation to be
Yeah.
had, like a meeting, something like that.
Maybe-
Yeah, an open door commitment that if there's unrest, we can talk about it.
I think a conversation is always
Yeah.
appropriate between employees and management, but we do want to be respectful of the fact that Santa Florentina cannot open themselves up to liability
Oh,
of
for sure.
discrimination of
Yeah.
any
Yeah.
sort.
Yeah.
And so we just need that to be understood. But we support employees coming and talking to management, and so I think we sound like we have a deal here today.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Great.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you
you
so
guys.
much.
It's a
Really
pleasure.
appreciate that. It was
Pleasure.
lovely to work
Thank
with
you.
you.
Thank you
so
guys.
much.
Hello, I'm Tamar,
I'm Vanessa.
and we would like to thank you all again for being with us today. We are very happy with how this negotiation turned out. I think both sides were very civil and respectful across the table, which is always a breath of fresh air when you're in a negotiation. Looking back at the negotiation, there are definitely things that we would improve on, but there's definitely things that we believe that our clients would be happy with, and that we were happy with how we handled the matters.
Absolutely. One point of improvement we believe is maybe exploring the option of finding replacement opportunities for the children a bit sooner. It was important for us to hold firm on it because that is the mission of what Santa Florentina does. And so, but realizing within the negotiation and listening to the union reps, we understand that the caseload was a big deal for them. And so maybe had we explored that earlier, we wouldn't have been right down to the wire during the negotiation. But it was important to find the balance, and I believe we were able to ultimately find that.
Another point of improvement, I think, when we took that initial break, it was because we had a misunderstanding between the caseloads. And when we came back from the break, we didn't really still get clarity about that misunderstanding, and then it was brought up later on in the negotiation, and then we figured out we were talking about two different types of case managers. So I think if we had done that earlier, that would have been resolved quicker. Moving forward, I think there was a lot of things that we are happy with.
Yeah, we were able to keep the wages at a level that Santa Florentina could maintain. We really want to stay around the $19 mark. We thought it was fair. It's what's in line with what the city does. And so that number seemed to be a good place for us. And what we were able to do is really get creative in how that number looked. We were able to do $18.75 in the beginning, which is a quarter less than the 19. Give them 19 for year 2. In year 3, although it's above the average, it really is that quarter that we save from year 1. So we're still looking at that $19 mark, which is in line budgetary-wise with what Santa Florentina can do.
Right, and another point that we discussed in our pre-evaluation is we wanted to keep that federal contract, and we were able to do so during the negotiation. Though we are going to modify that contract and take on a less amount of children from the federal government, we still are able to keep that contract. So I think that our clients would be happy that they are still going to be getting that source of income coming in.
And overall, the focus was the children and making sure that Santa Florentina could still execute their mission and still be the integral part of the community that they are. And so keeping that federal contract, but also keeping the employees happy so that they do their job was something that we ultimately found and were able to accomplish today.
Right, and I think we were creative in our solutions. I think we were collaborative with the other side, and we were very transparent when they would ask us questions for clarity. We gave them the numbers that they were looking for. If we didn't have information, we gave them that information. And also, I think we just, we were very collaborative at the table. We liked their ideas of possibly having meetings, because we wanted to keep that good rapport with the employees. And I think that we did a great job of doing that. We solved the issue but also maintain a healthy relationship with employers, which is what any employee really wants at the end of the day.
Absolutely. So thank you again, and do the judges have any questions for us?
No questions.
Okay, thank you so much.
I have a question.
Okay.
Let me find it. Vanessa.
Yes.
I think you made a statement. I think you said something like, the most difficult work is the most rewarding.
Yes, I said that sometimes the most challenging work, or that can be emotionally burdening, is also sometimes the rewarding work.
Where'd you get that from? Who told you that?
Life experience. No. And just thinking about how nonprofits organizations are typically operated, and also having experience with foster children. My mother had foster children growing up. It was difficult. It's very hard, and there are long hours. There's grueling cases. You do get really attached to these moments, but you go home and you feel proud of the work you've done. I think even as attorneys, sometimes I'm in the removal defense clinic, and we work with clients at school. It's so draining, but you're so happy that you're able to help people in some of the most vulnerable points in their life. And so I think that was the theme I was trying to get at, but I may have come across inappropriately.
I think that you could have really been challenged on that, but they didn't challenge you. So you have to be really careful when you use cliches, because you could really be challenged on it, and you may not be able to support it. And if you have like a judge sitting in the room, they may look at that as some kind of point of weakness. So you have to be really careful on that.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
I don't have so much as a question, sort of comments maybe. Yeah. So we'll wait for that.
Okay.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Hi again, my name is Emilie McConnachie,
And I'm Connor Collins.
and together we are Team Q. In our post-negotiation analysis today, we are to reflect on, if we were to face the same issue tomorrow, what would we do the same, and what would we do differently? I'll start, and then I'll pass the torch.
Sounds good.
Okay, so first off, in preparing for this negotiation, we took a very integrative approach. We fleshed out as much as we could our clients' interests. We looked at all of the potentials that we could come up with that would meet those interests insofar as our offer table goes. We constructed a multi-level offer table that was extraordinarily helpful when it came to the stickier points in the negotiation, just being able to look at each other, look at the table, make a little pointer to it, and know where we were at. So we would prepare very similarly should we face the same situation tomorrow. Insofar as our strategy, we had the three-bucket approach. First, the collaborativeness. We do feel like we did have a good relationship across the table, but it didn't feel necessarily warm and fuzzy, and that's not necessarily how it needs to feel, especially when we're advocating for clients' interests. But I do think that we maintained a philosophy of staying soft on people and hard on interests, as they did as well, and this allowed us to meet our clients' interest overall. Moreover, when Connor had made the decision to pull caucus at about the 30-minute mark, we were delving into a direction in which we were butting heads just a little bit. And so having that opportunity to step out, refocus, step back in, and again refocus the table really allowed us to move forward and maintain that collaborative intent that we started with. And so in regards to flexibility, we did see an interesting, and active listening really, we predicted that we would see an interesting component of their interest being either a priority on caseload or wages, or having one area that was more or less flexible than the other. We saw them as inherently intertwined for our clients, and they were also that way for their clients. Ultimately, what we saw after the caucus was that we went big picture, and I think doing that is something that we would do again should we see this issue again. What we would perhaps do differently is not focusing on the minute piece-by-piece agenda in that first half of the negotiation. It was helpful for assessing interest, and we did actively listen, better understand where they were coming from, but ultimately it did feel like something that may have taken some time away from what could have been finding creative solutions down the line. I
Yeah.
do think one thing that Connor did really well, though, was actually in pursuing those creative solutions. When we were kind of tossing out a few ideas when it came to an area of impasse, I think you did a really good job of trying to create ideas that would allow for mutual gain.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think that going for the creative solutions was a great idea, and we looked for multiple opportunities to expand the pie beyond just a very binary caseload and wages argument. Unfortunately, it seemed like the facts on both sides weren't really conducive to that. But I think looking for opportunities to get outside of the main crux of the negotiation is always important, and is definitely something that we would look to do in the future. Additionally, I think that what we did is teamwork, and I mean that in two senses of the word. The first sense is I think that me and Emilie did a great job working as a team. I thought that there was a lot of great back and forth, and I felt like right as I called the caucus, for example, she's like, oh, I was thinking the same thing. So we were just on the same page the whole time, and I think that's just from doing so many negotiations together. And I think that was really great. Additionally, I think we did a great job. You know, Emilie kind of mentioned that it wasn't warm and fuzzy, but I feel like, you know, at the end of the day, this is one organization, and we did a great job because we're going to have to go back to the negotiation table in 3 years of keeping it cordial and keeping it as a working relationship instead of blowing everything up and turning it into an aggressive argument that's not really conducive to either party. So that kind of takes us to our outcome, and we feel like ultimately we got a deal that was great for our clients. So 3 buckets to remind you were financial stability, working conditions, and autonomy. So under financial stability, we were looking to ultimately get wages above $18.50, and we accomplished that. We got wages at $18.50 in the first year. Additionally, by year 3, we were going to go up to the $19.20, $19.25 range, which is great for our client. We also got the workload, which our max was 20 to 19. So we think that both of those deals allows our employees to be extremely happy about where they're sitting at the end of this negotiation. Additionally, kind of that third bucket we touched on as well is that autonomy. And now that they have that open door policy and the fact that they agreed to that limited federal contract or looking to divert resources to help their employees, we feel like that's really good for the employees, really good for the organization as a whole, and will result in more kids being put in homes. So,
With that said, we do want to thank you again for your time, and hopefully you enjoyed spending your Saturday with us. Thank you so much.
you guys have any questions? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Did you know the number that you wanted to agree, the number you wanted to stop at before you?
In preparation for the negotiation, we created a chart that had our reservations, the lowest point we would agree to, our aspiration, which was our highest point, which was our opening offer, and then our target. Our target was where we thought realistically working with, we recognized a nonprofit organization, one who was already behind in terms of employee compensation, and that was around that, I believe it was like the 19 mark. We assumed that there would be an ability to increase over time, and so that's why we really pushed in those last few minutes for that increase over time in that wage rather than just a flat 19 across. And so in our preparation, yes, we did have a variety of numbers that we had targets for.
One more question. How do you spell your last name?
Yeah, no worries. McConnachie. I don't make it easy for you guys. Sorry.
And I have one question.
Absolutely.
Can you tell me why you decided to start off your agenda with the pay versus the caseload?
I think that we kind of saw the issues as very heavily linked. And actually, in our preparation, we had them kind of as two of the primary, interests of our client. We didn't really have a preference of starting one way or the other, but they brought up wages early, and they jumped right into that. And we thought that, if they wanted to talk about that, especially since they seemed more focused on that issue initially, we would be okay with that, and that was part of building that collaborative nature that we were talking about at the beginning. Does that answer your question?
Thanks.
Hello. You guys can we start?
You can start.
Guys did a great job. My name is David Neely. I'm a former dean of John Marshall Law School, former law professor, have a PhD in education from the University of Illinois. Currently, I'm a practicing lawyer. I'm just not going to say you guys did great. Let me just give you some specific comments. With respect to Connor and Emilie, when you introduced yourself, you went so fast and you didn't spell your names. I couldn't get everything. So I think anytime you're in a formal setting, whether it's court, deposition, hearings, whatever, say your name slowly, and then spell your name, because there's probably going to be a court reporter there, someone who's documenting the proceedings. I think you were very flexible, and I think the flexibility is really important. I said this earlier with respect to Vanessa. When you make statements or cliches, sometimes you may have a lawyer, especially if they're not really interested in settling the matter right then and there, because the faster you settle, the less attorney fees you get. So when you make cliches, somebody could easily challenge you, and then the negotiations could go in another direction. But Emilie didn't challenge you on that. You should, lastly, I think that in any kind of negotiation process, it's very important to recap the other side's really important points, because that's the point that may be the settlement, or that's the point that may go in order. And if you don't recap it, at the end of the proceedings, somebody's going to have to summarize everything. So I think that, through the process, if you recap things, and then everybody's on the same page, and then you can move forward. But overall, you guys did a great job.
No, go ahead. Well, one, we expect you to do a great job, or you wouldn't be at the last year, right? And I'm not saying that kiddingly. I'm saying that on top of that, yes, you did. One thing I missed here is sort of the real life situation. In a real life situation, with two people on both sides, you're going to call each other by your first name. No one's going to get mad at you if you call them the first name. I mean, one of the best negotiators, don't take this wrong, is a used car salesman. And that's what they do, they negotiate. And there's no better way to get a defensive person down by talking to them personally. Because you're people, you're not machines. And I understand that you've gone through a number of these, and it's the same argument, you might say, and so now you're trying to memorize it. And it's hard to get out of that. I understand that. But look at each other as people, and once you talk to each other as people and not representatives, you're going to soften that other guy out. That's the only suggestion I really have.
My name is Cynthia Brisbane. I am currently a judge with the Illinois Department of Public Health. Before that, I was counsel for DCFS and here in Illinois, and before that I was a public defender for 10 years. So I will say that I was really interested in this fact pattern because it was talking about a subject that's near and dear to me, in that was a big part of what the client that I had, they did every day, day in and day out. As far as litigation is concerned, I believe that both of you guys are top notch. I thought your professionalism was really good, and the way you work together was very good. I do have a couple of suggestions regarding what I would say you all need to improve, and it's not much. First, for Team L, I really would have liked to hear more from Tamara. I did not hear enough from you, and then when you did say what you had to say, I thought it was very good. I thought that you did a great job talking about the, I believe you were talking about the, let's see, hold on, let me get my notes mixed up here. The charity. So the charity work, and you went back and you were talking about how the fundraising could not do everything that needed to be done. So I thought that was an excellent way to come back to as to what they were saying about, oh, you guys could just go out and just raise all the money. It's like, no, we can't raise that much money. So I thought that was really good. I would have liked to have heard more from you. Vanessa, absolutely wonderful job. I thought I was watching How to Get Away with Murder. It was great. You had an excellent grasp of the facts. You controlled the negotiation from beginning to end. Excellent responses to their counter offers. Really great flexibility on the offers. Excellent phrasing. And I'm going to disagree with my counterpart here a little bit. I thought that you did a great job of phrasing the mission of your client. And I think by you doing that, you let the other side know, like, listen, this is hard work. It's hard work for anybody. We're doing the best we can, but you need to understand, we're not willing to compromise the work we're doing to make your client happy. And so I thought that was an excellent gambit in that you took a slight risk to humanize the chairs. Like, you need to understand, you're not talking to a big corporation here. You're talking to a charity that's doing the Lord's work for not a lot of money. So I thought that was great. And I thought that the only thing I would say that I would have liked to hear more from this side, when you were talking about the fundraising, and I think you had a really good grasp of what you could have done better from your post-analysis. You could have said more about right up front what other alternatives you could have introduced as leverage when you're talking about where can we put these kids somewhere else. So I really think you had a good grasp of what you could have done better, because I think that would have saved both sides a lot of time. So really, really good job. And you guys were excellent as well. I mean, really, really good job when you were talking about, give me 1 second. Connor, I really liked how you had an excellent grasp of the facts. When everybody's like, oh, what's the numbers? You were able to come in and bam, this is the number. You broke it down very well. I thought that was a really good way to show that you came ready to negotiate. And I really like how you and Emilie advocated for the workers. I thought you guys were a little bit too nice, a little bit, but I think that what you were trying to do was be active listeners, and you were cognizant of the fact that we're going to have to come to the table again. So you didn't want to be too aggressive, but I think you could have been a little bit more aggressive with the fact that the numbers, the national numbers versus the state numbers, were just way too off. But I think you did a good job of trying to keep that in the flow of the conversation. I think you may have allowed a little too much of the negotiation to be controlled by the other side. You did have some facts on your side that I didn't hear as much, which I would have liked to hear more about. And the fact that you allowed them to set the tone with the pay when your client's primary demand was the caseload. So I think that you should have gotten that back in your corner and talked more about the caseload and then went to the pay, because of how the fact pattern was laid out, and that the most important thing for your client was that caseload. I think that you focused a little too much on that, and even when they came at you with the 19 versus 19, and then you came back with 20 versus 20. So I think you waited a little too long to play that 20 for 20 card, because when you played it, they had already said 19 for 19, which goes to the fact that your client wanted the lower caseload. But then you went back and said, well, how about 20 caseloads? So at that point, you were working against yourself a little bit, because they had already said 19 versus 19, 19 for 19. So I think making sure that you're keeping your client's interests at the forefront is the way to go. But I think your teamwork was really good. I like how you guys were able to, when the numbers were flying and things were changing, you were able to really keep looking at each other and just basically you kept moving with the flow. So excellent job with that. And the way you guys worked with the opposing team was really good. So excellent job on both sides. And thank you all so much for making it entertaining for us.
And when you don't understand something, feel free to ask the question, like, Judge, I still don't understand. What is it that I said that you didn't agree with? That's
I
the question,
just said
Judge. Just kidding with that.
I am, I'm a litigator at heart, and, if you have to err on the side of caution, whether you want to be too passionate or, you know, I always go with passion, because at the end of the day, you'll feel good about, you know, the fact that you fought for your client and what they wanted. So, good job, both sides.
And I'll support that. I didn't introduce myself. I'm Bob Christie. I'm a litigator across the river, about this level too. But, yeah, you did a very good job. And it's just for your own edification, talk about a nonprofit organization. Doesn't mean they can't make a lot of profit. They can make millions. It just means they don't have shareholders. If that ever comes across. And I don't think that was an issue as far as it needed to be addressed in this mediation, but just in the future.
Thank you. Round of applause for these guys.